Well, why don't we do this, just so we keep things rolling? Why don't we go around, we'll do some introductions, and I'm sure we'll have a few others join us as we go around and do that. Lana, our guest, is on, and we'll introduce her a little bit as we get going. But Miria, do you want to introduce yourself and get things kicked off for us? And we kind of want to do this probably a pretty quick introduction,
Sure.
So just sort of name, organization, where you are, just a quick snippet of what you do.
Sure. I'm Miria Tost from Norwich. I'm with Foundry 66, Norwich's new co-working space, and I'm the marketing director there.
Fantastic. Thank you. How about you, Joel?
Joel Whipple. I work in digital marketing and involved in general entrepreneurial community. Work out of West Hartford, Connecticut.
Excellent. Thanks. And Eric?
Yes, good morning. This is Eric Knight, founder and president of Remarkable Technologies, a company I founded 23 years ago. I'm a serial entrepreneur, serial inventor, and a mentor across startups here in Connecticut.
Awesome. Excellent. And let's see, I did hear at least one more beep. Who else has joined us?
This is Tony Van Grove. I'm founder of Miles Finch Innovation, an innovation consulting firm in New Milford, Connecticut, and we just opened a co-working space called Makery Co-working here in town as well.
Fantastic. How are you, Tony?
I'm great.
Good. You guys getting some good snow there?
Yeah, it's going horizontal right now, which is
good. Yeah, the same here. So we actually, this is nice. We've got all but the southwestern part of the state. We've got all the other corners, and the Southwest is supposed to join us at some point, but they're maybe a little extra sleep today. So there are probably a couple on the call that haven't been on in one of our calls before or in one of our meetings. And just to give you a backup and just give you a little bit of sense of what we do and what we're about. Essentially, we're a consortium of entrepreneur event organizers within Connecticut. We've joined together to do a variety of things. Our first priority was to create a statewide entrepreneur event calendar, which is, we started this about 2.5 years ago, and we're actually on our second version of that now. And so we have about 30 organizations whose events are automatically aggregating into that calendar, and then we're serving that information out to about 50 websites for promotion around the state. So essentially a major cooperative marketing opportunity, and also giving us a lot of data about what kind of events are going on, what kind of balance our ecosystem has, and so on. And you'll see as we get towards the tail end of the call, we've taken on a few other projects, and we'll highlight those as we go. But just to give you a sense, we've got, I think most of you know now, we've got a statewide Connecticut Entrepreneur Awards. So there's our first version of that. We'll have a awards event in April, and we'll actually be telling you the date and location at the end of the meeting, so don't leave. And then we have an opportunity to organize a Connecticut Entrepreneur one-day summit that would be potentially in 2018, and it would be co-located with the Connecticut Business Summit, which used to be the Connecticut Business Expo, and it's owned by the Hartford Business Journal, and we'll talk more about that. And there is another sort of thing we've been working on, which is a way to drive more applications for the various programs, accelerator, incubator, grant programs around the state. And so we'll chat about that as well. But I don't want to sort of get too far off of our sort of primary topic today, which is to talk about community building. And we've got just a great guest with us today. I just want to back up 1 second. I did hear someone else beep in. Is there someone who's joined that hasn't introduced themselves?
Yeah, Brenda Lewis, Transactions Marketing, and also owner of TechSell Stanford, the first enterprise accelerator in Fairfield County.
Welcome, Brenda. And now we have all corners of the state involved. Yay!
With our fuzzy slippers on.
with your fuzzy slippers. Yes, absolutely. So great. I'm so glad. So let me introduce Lana Zumbrin, and certainly, Lana, add to this as you will. But Lana is the executive director of the Fuse co-working space in Lincoln, Nebraska. She's also the founder of Lincoln Coffee and Code, the founder of Lincoln Amateur Hobby Web Developers, a community organizer for 1 Million Cups, and actually Brenda and I were talking about 1 Million Cups yesterday. And then she's also the Lincoln Girls Who Code Lincoln Club's coordinator and an active member of Startup Champions Network. And besides that, she runs a lot and is otherwise very active. So, Lana, welcome to Connecticut, at least virtually.
Thank you very much. Glad to.
So I do hear a bit of an echo. Let me, for those who are on the line who are not actively participating right now, in other words, not talking, if you wouldn't mind, put your phone on mute. That will give us the best sound quality. And just so you know, we are recording this call, so if anyone has to duck out early, we'll have a recording so you can hear it all later as well. So the way we format these conversations typically is I've got a few questions to sort of get things kicked off and warmed up and get us get us rolling here. And then we're going to open it up for everybody to talk about. And obviously we want to stay on this community building topic as much as possible and utilize Lana's expertise. Just so you do know, we're going to stop at about 10:15. We'll do a bit of a sort of debrief on this conversation. So talk amongst ourselves about what our takeaways are, and then we'll get into just a couple other topics. We'll probably go to about 11:15 today. Just we've got a few extra things we want to talk about, and again, understand if anyone needs to bail out, but just want to give you a fair warning. So, Lana, let's kick off. Let's get into this, and can you tell us a little bit about Fuse Co-working? How long has the co-working space been around, and how did you get involved?
Absolutely. I do want to say that I'm a little bit jealous of your snowstorm today. I'm very familiar with those days, being from Nebraska, so it sounds kind of nice to be in slippers and watching the horizontal snow. So enjoy that. So Fuse Co-working has been around for about 4 years, and I was a coworker at Fuse, actually working for a company an hour down the interstate here, officing at Fuse before I joined the staff in January joined the team in January of 2016. So the three co-founders of Fuse started the first co-working space in Lincoln and in Nebraska about 4 years ago, and they built a culture. They had about 20 members, and two of the co-founders worked full-time at the space. And then in the fall of 2015, they started talking with me and with two larger companies in town about really expanding the project, and now we are a project of Nelnet and Speedway, two larger companies. The co-founders serve on the advisory board, but the project is owned by the larger companies, and I'm an employee of Fuse Co-working. So cool. Over the last year, we've grown from that 20 original members to about 120 here at our current location, which is 11,000 square feet.
That's fantastic. So getting into the idea of community building, you've had a lot of success in community building, and I guess, how did you do it? What are some of the things that you found were the keys to the process?
Yeah, it's been a fun year. 2016 was a fun year as we grew. Obviously, the key factor in a co-working space is the culture and the community. There needs to be productivity. That's the baseline. But the key glue and the thing that makes people actually want to join is when they walk in the door and they can feel the energy. And so that's, as opposed to working in your basement, in your home office, or in a coffee shop, the real value is this collaborative environment and the community. So I think the keys over the last year are basically relationships. So So I have done several things to be sure that everyone is clear what the core values are. For example, we have a chalkboard wall in our kitchen, and the values are actually written on the wall. Our core values here are community, inclusivity, collaboration, and sustainability. And those are in, a beautiful chalkboard art or chalk art style written on the wall. And every time I give a tour of Fuse, we stop, basically one of the last stops on the tour is in the kitchen, and we talk about the culture of, people bring their lunches, they sit around the granite counter, and they eat lunch together. And these are the things that we expect from each other. We expect to be know each other as human beings in addition to coworkers. So it works. Take away office politics and think about all the healthy things in an office environment, and that's what we try to support and actually have achieved here at Fuse.
That makes total sense. So you've gotten involved. You founded and lead several sort of other things, such as 1 Million Cups and so on, in the Lincoln community. How have those helped you drive the community at Fuse? Is it a complementary sort of symbiotic relationship, or how does that all integrate?
Yeah, definitely. I think that the main way that has helped is that people have a faith to associate with Fuse. So there's an importance of creating a presence in the community. Lincoln is about 250,000 people, so it's a relatively small community. Our startup ecosystem is really small as well. We have a lot of density within about a 6-block area. So, one of the main objectives of mine I started most of those things before I came on board at Fuse, but the priority that I put on being part of the community while at Fuse is really to, of course, just the altruistic idea of supporting the community, but also just having the community know a face and a name and have an actual in real life person that they know to, like, hey, if I want to reach out to somebody at this place, I've got a face and a name to associate with it.
Right. Well, and I suppose by virtue of leading those, you also have consistency and regularity of being seen in the community versus, not being involved and having it being, much less consistent.
Mhm. And it is tricky, right? Because that's a lot of hats to wear in addition to operating a working space. So one of the things that I've really enjoyed, but just the way that I'm wired, I really enjoy working with people one-on-one and helping people solve their own problems. So this integral part of building Fuse over the last year has been our internship program. And I've invited people in as interns to and talk to them and say, hey, these are the baseline things that we require, 10 hours a week. We have like these daily items that all of us do who are on the team. But then I talk to the people who are interested and I say, what do you want to learn? What out of all of the projects that Fuse, has, or that you can dream up that would add value to the community, what would you like to learn and do? And then really work with those interns and give them full ownership to actually run the project. Mm. And then in trade, typically all of our internships are trade as opposed to monetarily compensated. So in trade, they build relationships, they get referrals, they in some cases get hours from the university that they're going to, and they get the experience of operating that thing with full ownership, that project.
That's fantastic. So you're right now dealing with one of the issues that as I travel around, I see many struggle with, and I'm wondering how you're navigating it. And I should let everybody know, since we asked Lana to be a guest, she actually announced that she's going to be leaving Fuse and moving to Europe for a little while. And so, number one, congratulations on that. And how are, I guess with that, you're dealing with succession, which is, especially in the volunteer world or in the community building world, quite often that is very much an afterthought. And when that charismatic leader gets hired or, gets called somewhere else, it's pretty rare that there's someone ready to take up the mantle or a team. How are you dealing with that? And what do you see in succession with all of the many hats that you're wearing?
So a couple key factors, and I guess I would stress this too as just part of the way that I've operated here over the last year, is to really have be very liberal with my time. So I over communicate. I try to make a point, I learned this from a mentor actually years ago, that I have a philosophy of over communicating, and I verbalize that philosophy. So I take that approach with everybody that I work with on a day-to-day basis, that everyone is very clear about what's going on. So I started thinking about this decision that I made in December and communicated to my board on the 30th of December that I was going to leave, and I started thinking about it in September. So I started talking about it with a couple of my, really trusted advisory board members late, in the fall, and then started just preparing my team for the succession in really simple ways, which is the best practice for operations in general, creating processes and procedures. So we have a lot of our documents on Google Drive, on the Fuse Co-working Google Drive, and I actually just invited an intern into being responsible for creating all of Fuse's 2016 process and procedures. So we have a huge index of our process and procedures, and then we have Google Drive files, Word documents, or Excel or whatever is appropriate for the process or procedure, just all stacked up in our Google Drive folder. So the internship program actually will provide a little bit of seamlessness too in the transition. So many of our interns stick around so far we've had 3 semesters. We've had a spring, a summer, and a fall semester, and then this is our spring again here in the first part of 2017. So we have one intern that is back for her 3rd semester, and she's, at this point, she's being compensated. I always say that, the first semester is a trade or for credit hours, and then we'll go from there. But because of those really, because of the community building, I'm able to offer the next director some assistance in terms of people on the team, which really operationally in the budget aren't having a huge impact, but in the culture and the knowledge of how we operate and the feel and the everyday of Fuse, they're very, very impactful. So I also am serving on the selection committee and will be in the interview group for the new director. We have 6 really strong candidates, and just the fact that we do have a really great presence in the community, and especially in the startup community. We had about 10 people apply that we are very familiar with, that are either already at startups or service providers or consultants in the startup ecosystem who applied for the job. And so we have 6 candidates, only one of which I'm not super familiar with, who are interested in the position. So the community building actually helped feed that pipeline.
That's fantastic. Well, again, congratulations on that. I'd really like to open up the questions to the group, and here's what I'd like. When you want to ask a question, if you wouldn't mind, just remind Lana of your name and where you're from, so there's some context and so everybody knows who's talking. So who'd like to ask the first question? and you may have your phone on mute, so you're not hearing anything yet. So that's always the problem with being on the phone as opposed to in person. Who has a question?
Hi, this is Miria from Norwich. We just opened a co-working space, and we filled up the offices really quickly. We filled up designated desks really quickly. We're having problems reaching out to people that might want to use flex space, and we're not sure who our target audience should really be. We're thinking millennials because they're mostly used to, the open workspace idea, and we're a much smaller community than that. We're about 40,000 in the city, but regionally it's about 127,000, 130,000. So can you give me some ideas about how to reach those types of people?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. If many of you aren't familiar with Nebraska, we have a lot of rural areas as well. And since Fuse has created a lot of buzz, we have some interest, in the surrounding areas for some co-working. So I've been working actually with a community similar size to yours about how to get rolling and thinking through some of the key things that will be important. So I can share some of those same things with you. I've been encouraging. It's actually a space in Kearney, Nebraska. If you want to look them up, they have a really cool historic downtown with all of the second floors of the buildings basically empty, and so Larry there he's got a second floor that he's going to turn into a co-working space, and he's asking the same question, like, who should my audience be? How do I reach them? How do I educate people really about what co-working is and help them see the value? So some of the things that I've suggested that he think through are how he can over communicate that education piece. I suggested free events, just get people into the space. Offer free co-working, like a month of free co-working. Find events that you can offer a raffle prize or a door prize or some sort of silent auction item. Just find all of the ways that you can give people the invitation to come in and work with you. And then when they do come in, be sure that you have some influencers of that culture that you want to create who are there. So maybe offer, handpick and invite 5 to 10 people who can be who you're familiar with and who you feel like have really good social networks, like social media networks even, that can serve as that starter for the culture and the feel that you would like to have at your co-working space. Or maybe, if you already have that, then have conversations with those people that you feel really strongly influence that feeling of community or the energy that is present when you walk in the space, and ask them and just say, do the over communication thing of like, hey, this is what you contribute here. Thank you. And I would really like to empower you to be, to welcome people when they come in and to keep your eye out for people, and then find some way to incent them that makes sense.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Miria. Great. What other questions do we have?
This is Brenda. We have an enterprise accelerator that we've just started in Stamford. Our business plan actually calls for us to become a nonprofit next year. We decided to go the sort of a break-even route initially because the process to be a nonprofit is an 18-month, registration effort. So I'm very curious about the company that bought you and what kind of a company it was. Was it, a community bank or somebody like that? Because what we found is a hesitance on the part of our largest legacy businesses here to commit to something that is really bigger than the community itself.
Yeah, that's a challenge. The companies that work with that own Fuse or that have invested in this project, their motivation is fostering entrepreneurs and growing the entrepreneurial ecosystem here so that they have companies to invest in. So, yeah, co-working, is a loss leader. It's not, a huge money maker typically, just as the business model, but their objective is to break even at least, right? And we're doing, we're doing that, and then build relationships and have really an inside scoop to the hot companies, to the hot new startups that they want to, check out and work with in terms of, actual, to find that 1 out of 10 that is going to, or 1 out of whatever the statistic is, that's going to be a solid investment. So it's going to be hard to have that conversation with people, at a traditional bank environment. They can, maybe think through what the value add is for them in terms of small business and small business loans. And I can connect you potentially with, if this is of interest to you, with our a program here called Catalyst. It's a Union Bank project, and is it Brenda? Is that right?
Yeah.
It might be good just to have a follow-up conversation with Tolan Mabit of Catalyst here, and see if he would have some further tips for you. Because if the folks that you're working with aren't necessarily looking for investment opportunities, then maybe Tolan can give you a little bit more insight to what the traditional bank interest is in a project like that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Super. What other questions? This is the golden silence. So again, if you are talking, we're not hearing you. So take your phone off mute, but please join us and ask a question. It sounds like somebody was getting ready. We'll certainly interrupt you with any questions. I'll pause periodically here, but Lana, as you look at community building, I think there are a lot of ways to look at community building, and certainly I think the first focus many of us have is how do I get a lot of people into the community, and then as we begin sort of understanding it more or looking at it more, it's really how do I build the diversity? How do I reach out to underserved communities? I know enough about Nebraska to know that it is not a particularly diverse state in general, but certainly in the metro areas you would expect it. But how do you work on in all the endeavors, not just at Fuse? How do you work on inclusion, or is that an important part of what you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. You might remember I mentioned those values that are on the wall. One way is to actually verbalize it and write, like collaboration, inclusivity, community, and sustainability. Those are the things that we want to be focused on and we want to be about. So the ways that other than that over communication and saying like, hey, here are the avenues to communicate. If you experience something, or if you have an idea, like here are the ways that we support that and make that happen. Other than that, I've been intentional about going to the places, not expecting the diverse communities within Lincoln to come to us, but actually going to them and saying, hey, is there, if there's a person in this group or in this organization that would find value within the startup community and building those relationships, then we want to make that happen. And saying, okay, here's a 3-month free membership to Fuse. How can we make this a comfortable and productive place for you to be, and just inviting that conversation is one way, and going to those audiences instead of having the expectation that they're going to find us. Other things, as I mentioned, that we have a lot of interns, and I do a lot of raffles, that type of thing. I make sure that we align ourselves with people who also share that value, and that's tricky, right? Because sometimes it's hard to have that conversation or to know. But if there's things in the media or if there's organizations that are really doing inclusivity well, then I want to align myself with those organizations and be sure that we are, again, present in the community with those voices.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you. Maybe if we drill down into that just a little bit more, because diversity is it seems to me very complex, right? We have ethnic diversity, we have gender diversity, we have skill diversity in terms of different types of skills people have, and so on, and it continues to sort of evolve from there. Are there some specific, just even thinking about recent experiences and going to a startup weekend, it's 75% of the people in the room were white and male and fairly young, and mostly sort of business focus as opposed to developers or designers and so on. Are there so that kind of encompasses all those different components, but are there some specific goals you have in terms of building a diverse community? Have you looked at it that way at all?
Yeah, so I have our goals actually written down, and I communicate those to the advisory board, which my advisory board is all white males. So
a bank.
Surprise.
How strange.
Right. So one thing that again, that over communication, I say, even in the interview process, I said, like, this is something that's important to me, and this is, I did receive support, and it's easy to get support because the research shows that diversity in all of those areas that you mentioned, Bill, will actually produce more positive results. So inclusivity is easy to sell right now. It's just harder to execute. So one thing is that's helpful with goals, just like any goal, is to have it be measurable and to have it, to revisit that goal, as opposed to setting the goal at the beginning of the year and hoping that it comes to fruition at in December. To actually have it on the agenda of I have a community board, so that's one of the specific things that I've done to be sure that we're talking about it. I've invited 12 members of Fuse into this. I think we meet every other month. We were doing monthly, but right now it's been every other month for the third quarter or for the fourth quarter, and currently. So each of the community board members are people who are thoughtful about this issue, and they build the community and they shape the culture in more ways than just inclusion and diversity. But that's been a huge topic for us over the last year. And that group of 12, those community board members are really the people that have held me accountable to continuing to think about it. And then they've also been really they've been very generous with their time and with their talents and their connections and their relationships to say, hey, here's the person that might want to be involved in this way or this other way, or here's a person who could help you better understand, this perspective. So I've had probably 4 or 5 different meaningful conversations just to better, I'm a white female in my late 30s, and so I'm not assuming that I understand any of these complexities either, other than the ones that obviously the privileges that I have that I am familiar with of being white and female and like these different things. So or socioeconomic. That's another area that I've thought a lot about. Like, how do we address the fact that getting downtown and parking is a challenge for some of the people that we want to empower as entrepreneurs in our community. So I've had some conversations about transportation and about how we can better. That was one of the 4 or 5 really good conversations that helped me understand, like, okay, what if I'm putting myself in this person's shoes? What do I need to overcome to say, like, actually, this would be a good place to be, or this would be a comfortable and productive environment for me as a coworker.
That's fantastic. Has anyone else? I would assume that most have been working on making their community more diverse. But does anyone want to share a best practice that they found, or something that's really worked well for them?
This
wow,
is Brenda again.
Today.
I guess.
Yeah.
One of the things that I've found is to just, when you happen to meet, for example, an entrepreneur of color, or somebody who is, we have a Muslim who runs our tech meetup. I've actually cultivated those people and asked them to, pointedly ask them to send us folks who are from their communities, their mosques or their churches, or, wherever their solid background connections are, so that we can expand our diversity.
Oh, that's great. Very proactive. Anyone else want to share?
Yeah, this is Eric. Hi there. Good morning, Eric Knight. In Hartford at the Reset Business Factory, diversity is pretty much the norm. I look at it some mornings and it looks like the United Nations. There's everyone. It's just a natural segment of Hartford, and every possible race, religion, sexual identification, the whole gamut. It's really very exciting, and it's one of the most enjoyable parts about being in that in the accelerator. I'm there on Wednesdays and Thursdays. I provide full-time mentoring on those 2 days as a volunteer program, but coordinated and supported by something called CT Next here. It's a part of a funding and coordination program in Connecticut. But so on those 2 days, it's really fulfilling. I just enjoy the cultural and the diversity on every facet. So we really don't have a problem with, at least in Hartford, having to kind of coordinate diversity. It just kind of naturally happens as a natural slice of the cultural aspects of Hartford.
Eric, do you think that's driven primarily by location, because it was probably different when Reset was on Pearl Street, or was it Pratt Street, versus now in the Parkville section? Is the location, you think, changed that some?
Actually, I would say it's pretty close to the same. Okay. I know that a couple of years ago, when I was over in Manchester, there was quite much less diversity. So it's a town another 20-minute drive away, and just to the east of Hartford, and so it's definitely location dependent, because it's really bringing in the subset of the entrepreneurs that make up the segment of society that's within the region.
Yeah, that's great. Anybody else have something that's worked well for them in terms of building a more diverse community?
I don't have anything that works well, but maybe some help would be great. I'm from Norwich, and one of the struggles that we face is that most of the cultural diversity that's in Norwich has been imported by the casinos to work
right.
there. So we don't have a ton of really highly skilled people, and we have a ton of people that don't necessarily speak English as their first language. And aren't really interested in learning the language. So we'd like to, because that's who our community is, be inclusive of the cultures and but it's a little bit difficult to bring them into the economic community.
So, Miria, you may want to look up, and I'm more than happy to introduce you to these folks. There is a co-working space and accelerator in Lowell, Massachusetts called Entrepreneurship for All.
Okay.
And they actually are really, they actually now are up to, I think, 3 or 4 locations around Massachusetts, but they're very much focused on going into markets just like Norwich and helping the non-English speaker as well as the English speaker, be a successful entrepreneur. But if you're interested in that, I know them pretty well, and if you want to look at them online, I just let me know, and I'm more than happy to introduce you.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks.
Yeah. I'll share one quick thought, and this is just an observation I've had just from going around to a lot of communities. And I think the challenge that I tend to see many communities have when they talk about where we're not able to attract a diverse community is that more often than not they're building whatever program or structure or thing that they have in mind, and then they invite the audience to it, as opposed to engaging the intended audience up front or representation of that audience to help with the formation. In other words, to develop and design and articulate what needs to get done or what the program might be, and then co-launching it. And it's almost analogous to if you've ever moved into someone else's house or they've moved into yours. And the sort of normal features are, let me show you your shelf space. Let me show you, I opened up or cleaned out a drawer for you to use. Here's your area of the bathroom, or whatever the sort of rules are that are given to you by someone else, versus a situation where you find a place to move into together and you essentially both, if you will, co-own those decisions, and you co-own the space and also the care of it. I've tended to notice when people are guests, they don't care for things the way the owner does, and if you can give people more ownership, then they tend to be much better co-promoters and much better partners in the process. So just an observation. It may or may not apply, but I tend to see people build and finalize something and then go, oh yeah, well let's engage people, as opposed to engage people at that formation stage where really the best influences and maybe more deeper investment can happen. So Lana, let's get back to you. And so if we were going to wrap this up to sort of one kind of final thought on how do we build community most effectively, or one sort of big takeaway that you'd really want us to have from this conversation, what would that be?
I will answer that question in just one sec. So I wanted to say that real quickly along the diversity thing again, invite folks in to do like mentoring or exactly along the lines of what you were saying with the space. That's a really great analogy. Also, ask somebody to mentor at your space who's of the population or of the whichever area of diversity it is that you're trying to encourage, because people who then see somebody in a leadership position at your space will feel more comfortable. So, okay, sorry, just needed to.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
Back to your question. The one thing I think that I would encourage you all to do is keep in mind that that these are human beings, right? So as warm as relational as you can be, that's the key, right? We all know that these are, this is work, and these are things that have to happen because it's our job. But the key to real true community building is to interacting with people like they're human beings, and like they are, every day when you see somebody or when you walk into the meeting to say hi, how are you, and to be able to have the capacity to listen to that, and then to go into the business as two human beings, as opposed to two people that need to check something off the list, or a group of people that needs to check something off the list. So I guess that would be my one and done, just to remember that it's actually relational. And so if you want to build community, you need to be relational.
That's awesome. Cool. Well, Lana, we really appreciate you taking the time. You are more than welcome to join us for the rest, or if you prefer to sign off, we'll say thank you so much and allow you to do that. We're going to probably go till about 11:15 our time, so another maybe 25 minutes-ish. What would you prefer?
I think that I would love to stick around for another 5 or so minutes, and then I'll probably buzz out here by 9:30 my time, 10:30 yours. So I will just kind of drop off here at some point, if you don't mind.
Yes, no problem at all. So thank you, and don't worry about just drop off when it's convenient for you. And we, again, really appreciate you taking the time, and I'm looking forward to seeing you actually next week. So that's exciting.
Thank you for the invitation, and thanks everyone for having me. I've enjoyed talking with you all. So I will see you next week, Bill.
Sounds cool. Well, let's feel free to take your phones off mute as you will. I'd love to kind of do a little bit of a debrief on this conversation, and are there some key takeaways that you found important for your environment that seem like they ought to be things that your community is working on or that you implement? Who's going to be first?
Well, I'll go first. This is Tony. So since we're on day 4 of our co-working space.
Yay, Tony!
That's why I haven't been in as of yet, because I don't have a lot of experience to share with the group yet. But one of the things we've been wrestling with is obviously culture is first and foremost right now, is working on instilling and defining the culture, but kind of demonstrating that to our new members. And thankfully, we already have 10 people signed up. So I thought some of the things that she mentioned around, visualizing the values like in the kitchen, I thought was kind of interesting, and having the tour there was kind of intriguing to me, because I could just picture, you're in the kitchen grabbing a cup of coffee and then informally talking about kind of culture in that kind of relaxed atmosphere. I thought was kind of a neat idea, and kind of cultivating that community around food and eating together and treating each other as human beings. I mean, it's just everybody I've talked to around co-working leading up to this point has said consistently it's like people are buying the community more than the space. So all of her kind of insights around that were very helpful, and just just reiterating how important that is.
That's awesome. I'll share something quick. I was a part of a networking group for quite a while, and when a new member came in, they had to, in front of the group, and there was a group of like 25 people, but in front of the group there was this little model mule, and you had to put your left hand on its hindquarter and raise your right and promise not to be an ass, was the rule. So what you were saying, Tony, just reminded me of that sort of commitment we need to have in any community, not to be an ass. What other takeaways does anyone have?
Can I share another one real quick?
Please, go ahead.
thought, I loved her quote where she said, "Inclusiveness is easy to sell but hard to execute." And then the conversation that happened after that, for us up in New Milford, we're a much more rural town, and so definitely want to be inclusive, and it's easy to talk about that and promise. And I think it's going to be very tough for us up in a more rural area to really kind of deliver on that. So I really appreciated the conversation because it's something we're going to work hard to try to really reach out and try to actually even raise funds for people to help sponsor people to work in the space that are in kind of in a minority, so we can kind of open up access to people as much as we can.
That's fantastic. Cool. Other takeaways?
Hi, this is Eric. Just to tag on that thought, just having, and it was mentioned during the conversation a little while ago, having a diverse selection of mentors will attract complementary folks. Many times, and even we're not even talking just broad diversity, but also making sure that there are a couple of female mentors. Many times there's usually a disparity of men to women mentors, and it's really important as we're all trying to make sure there's a great cross-cultural balance and great male-female mix, that we don't forget that there are some fantastic mentors of both male and female, and that we should consciously think about that and make sure that's all inclusive to bring the inclusiveness all the way through the process. So the mentoring definitely helps reflect and generate the much needed diversity in every dimension.
Makes total sense. Cool. Well, thank you all for that, and we'll close up on the takeaways now and get into the rest of our agenda. So we have sort of three topics, and please hop into any of these. One is more just informational, but please ask questions, and the other two should be pretty interactive. So we've got something that we had a team that worked on what we're calling sort of the Gateway Event Team, and what they looked at was we have all these programs that go on, whether they're accelerator cohorts or incubators or various grant programs and so on, and they have application dates and they have target audiences and so on. And as I've traveled around and talked to various people that run these, I haven't heard one yet complain or not complain that they have enough candidates and that the quality of candidates isn't good enough. And so what the Gateway Event Team looked at is sort of the myriad of entry-level events that go on in our ecosystem, from Startup Grind to Startup Weekend to Million Cups to all these the Stanford Tech Meetup and all these different types of events. Eric, your happy hour, all those things, and then there's no connection between those and all the programs, all the things that you would apply for, such as Brenda's Accelerator and all the different accelerators in the state. And so what we can now do on LaunchEZ, and Tim has created instructions for this, and I've got sort of the first page of that up on the screen here, is in LaunchEZ, where we reposit all the events across the ecosystem. We can now reposit all of the application opening and closing dates for the accelerators. So as you all can get your application opening and closing dates in, and as far out as possible, at least a year would be good. But the idea being that as those dates are collected in one place, the people that are running the gateway events, and we can, as sort of the conveners here, we can drive this, but we can begin helping the gateway events, the entry events, line up to the application date. So, the idea that maybe Reset has an application date, that ends, say, in June, and it opens in March or whatever the dates are. But the idea that there could be a social enterprise startup weekend in April to sort of begin getting sort of winding up the knowledge and awareness of the Reset Accelerator. And so there are all sorts of things like that can line up. And we've already seen this with the calendar, the idea that any event organizer can go into one place and as they're planning an event or a series of events and look at where to place their event and how their event by its placement can complement what else is going on in the community. They can do that very easily in one place. Imagine being able to do that now with programs. So I will attach these instructions to the follow-up email. They were actually on the follow-up email from the last meeting as well. But to Lana's point, we kind of endeavor to over-communicate, and sometimes in over-communicating things, there's almost too much information. So I want to remind people that this is here, and we really want to help drive that. So are there any questions on this at all? Okay, great. So there have been a lot of great things going on with the Connecticut Entrepreneurial Awards. So we launched the nominations at the beginning of January. We now have somewhere upwards of 200 nominations. We'll probably finish up with about 220, 230 nominations, something like that. And it's really looking good. We've got, on the entrepreneur and the venture category, we've got just a boatload of great nominations. We've got good nominations in the space and program, as well as education categories as well. And the one category that we actually have done a little work behind the scenes to drive more into, and I'd open this up to anyone that wants to submit up through tomorrow, if there are any corporate folks or institutional sponsors that you want to recognize, please just go to the site, ctentrepreneurorawards.com, and nominate those institutions. We want to, just as a qualifier, we want to make sure that there are folks that would likely come to a celebration event. We had a couple of people nominate some organizations, and they didn't even know who was donating the money. It was going through some some charitable arm of the organization, and they had zero relationship. So it was really there's no benefit for anybody in that. But if there's sort of a face of the organization that is not just doing it to be a good community citizen, but also is doing it to build their brand and so on, and they'd want to invest in this, not from a dollar standpoint, but just a time standpoint, then that's probably a good nominee. And it's been a priority of ours is, if you look at all the actors in most ecosystems, the corporates are the last entrant, and they're somewhat the hardest entrant. And so we've been pretty intentional in terms of driving some good corporate nominations in order to have some presence at our first event here by the corporate and institutional folks. So we do have an event date and an event location for the celebration. So we're going to be at Stony Creek Brewery in Branford, April 24th from 6 to 8 p.m. So it's a really cool facility for anyone that's been there, or if you want to go to their website, you'll see it's an awesome facility. For those who have a boat, you can come by boat if you like. So April 24th, hopefully a nice, maybe it'll be like yesterday as opposed to today. Yesterday, Lana, it was 60 degrees here. Today, it's 25 or 30. So we are seeking sponsors. So if you know of any organizations that would like to be involved in this as a sponsor, and they would also be a sponsor of the calendar for the year it's sort of a package deal. So that's cool. And just so you know, the process that's going to go on from here, so we've got these 200 plus nominations, and right now we're working on profiles of all of the nominees and actually that's for those that we've reached out to. That's why we reached out for email addresses. We're going to share those profiles with the nominees, allow them to add to them, and then think of sort of the best of awards. So we're going to have community voting, and it'll be open for about 30 days. And essentially the idea will be for any of the nominees to co-promote with us the opportunity for their community to vote for them. We'll drive that voting. And so we'll have awards for all these categories by community voting, and then there'll be actually 4 categories where we're going to also have some judging going on. So, and we're going to actually, in those categories, have perpetual trophies. So besides sort of the traditional plaque type thing, we'll have perpetual trophies for community builders, exactly what we talked about today. So you all get an A+. And then for pre-revenue venture, post-revenue venture, and then Entrepreneur of the Year. And so we're really excited about that. We are excited that you all are involved, and this is a production of this organization, of the Connecticut Entrepreneur Event Organizers. So it's really a credit to all of us in putting this on. And just so you know who's on the organizing team right now, and we welcome all. So Tim Laubacher, Joel Whipple, Tony Vengrove, and Caitlin Morgan. I think Caitlin's the only one that's not on the call today. She's from Innovate Hartford, if you don't know her. But are there any, the team that's on the call that's also involved, anything that I missed, or does anyone have questions?
Hey, Bill, I'm also helping.
Oh, I'm sorry, Eric Knight, yes. Sorry, I didn't have a list in front of me. Yeah, Eric. Any questions at all, or anything the team wants to add that I missed on that?
I would just add, as we enter the next phase of voting, just please support and spread the news on social media as much as possible with your social networks, so we can drive people's interest in attending the event as well.
Yeah, no, that's great, Tony. And we're going to have a lot of pre-written content, so we'll share that, and it should be as easy generally as cutting and pasting and tagging and all that kind of fun stuff. Good. Any other questions or anything anyone want to add on the Connecticut Entrepreneur Awards? Okay, so this is kind of the final topic, and please, let's make this discussional. So just as a little bit of background, the Hartford Business Journal owns, and I think many people here have been to their sort of larger event called the Connecticut Business Expo. They, this year, in 2017, are rebranding that to be the Connecticut Business Summit. We may have an opportunity to do an entrepreneur track for content there, or to have some workshops related to entrepreneurship topics there in 2017, and we're kind of working through that now. But the bigger opportunity, and when I talked to them, my goal in talking to them was to get them to be a media partner for the Connecticut Entrepreneur Awards, and they said definitely. But here's what we're interested in. We're doing this Connecticut Connecticut Business Summit, and we would like you to do the awards there in 2018. And my response was, well, that's interesting, but that's just a couple-hour event, and it doesn't have any. It's substantial, but it's not sort of as as maybe as big and dramatic as we could be. And I floated the idea. Their primary goal is to get a lot of co-located content, and so I asked them about doing so with their business summit. I said, well, why don't we do a Connecticut Entrepreneur Summit co-located within the business summit? And so there, for those that don't know, this is usually in early June, usually the first Thursday in June each year. And so we're in discussions now, and we're very much at formation stage. The next step would be to have a meeting with them, with anyone from our team that's interested in being a part of this, talking through it, being an organizer, all those kinds of things. But the next step would be to put together a meeting and actually get in and kind of talk about their goals, our goals, and figure out if there's a way to and if it makes sense to have a Connecticut Entrepreneur Summit in June of 2018 co-located with the Connecticut Business Summit. So what's everybody's thoughts around that? Does anyone have questions, or does this sound like a crazy idea, or it sound like something we ought to look more into?
I think the crazier the better. But anyway.
I had already chatted with Bill about this and responded very positively. As much as I think the Connecticut Innovation Summit in the fall is a wonderful event, it has been perpetually at a 150, 200, and that really counts a lot of exhibitors and staff as well as far as attendance. The Business Expo gets 4,000 people, according to Bill, and I think that if we could co-locate with it in June, number one, it wouldn't really step on the toes of the Innovation Summit, but it would certainly expose our young entrepreneurs to a much broader audience and help us break down the silos that have been persistent in the state for certainly the 35 years that I've been in business. So I'm very high on the idea, if it can be effected in such a way that we would, be able to take advantage of their publicity, and obviously with the Journal being the owner, there has to be some downstate and upstate publicity as well as just what gets done in Hartford. But apart from that, I think it's a really good idea.
Hey, cool. Hey, Bill, this is Eric.
Sure. Yeah.
I've been perpetually inspired to do something on a really grand scale, like a national event, like a South by Southwest type of event, to bring, 10,000 people here and put us on the map, and not just on the map, but an attractor of talent and companies nationwide. So this could be as you and I have talked about, something like this could be the spark of something on that scale.
Yep. Good. Other thoughts?
Yeah, just to follow up on Eric's comment, some of you may be too young to remember that there once was, the largest venture fair on the East Coast that was located, it started in New Haven, but it ended up for many years being run in Stamford, regularly attracted 500 people, companies from all over the East Coast, and that was called the Crossroads Venture Fair. And the thing that was great about that was that it was the whole spectrum from tabletops for people that were basically at almost just beyond the ideation stage, right up to Series E and F, people who were pitching for funds. And that was very successful, typically, as I say, about 500 attendees. Once it moved back to New Haven, it just died. Mm-hmm. And we in Stamford are talking about, trying to rejuvenate that as a national, any company can present type operation. With our proximity to New York and Westchester County, we thought that might be a doable thing at this point. But, that's different from a Connecticut Entrepreneur Summit. So sure. I don't know how that would dovetail with what you guys are thinking about, but it seems to me, we should do maybe one of each.
Right. Yep. So let me ask this, because our next step is really, to maybe explore this a little bit deeper. And the way we traditionally operate as a group is we sort of talk about things in this setting sort of briefly, and then for those that are interested or would like further involvement, we form a team, and that team sort of runs with it and then reports back to the overall group. And it seems like that we ought to kind of follow that same model here with the Entrepreneur Summit. Who would be interested in being a part of, and there's no obligation beyond this, but being a part of an initial discussion meeting with the Business Journal about this topic, and again, to really kind of frame what the opportunity is or could be. Is there anyone that would like to be a part of that meeting? And I would say that we could organize it so that anyone could participate. In other words, you wouldn't necessarily have to come to their office in Hartford. We could have a phone line just like we're doing today. So, we could be sensitive to time.
I'd welcome the opportunity, Bill. Thank you.
Okay. Yep.
And I would as well, Bill.
All right, Brenda, great.
Yep.
And count me in, Bill, Tony.
I'm sorry, that was kind of faint. Who was that?
Sorry, a snowplow went by.
Tony, I hear you.
It's Tony. Count me in.
A hazard of the day. I got you, Tony. Anyone else?
Is there any?
I'm sorry.
We are a two-person organization right now, so I'm pretty swamped. But I'd be happy to teleconference in. I'm super familiar with event plans, so kind of what to do. So.
That's great. Just so you know, Maria, and it may be because we're all on off mute as we're getting a fair amount of echo, so you're echoing a bit, but I did hear that. So great, excellent. Anyone else who would like to be a part of that? And why don't we do this? So I've got right now Eric, Miria, Tony, and Brenda. Certainly, I'll socialize this in the follow-up email as well. So please, if you didn't pop in and you'd like to, just email me back, and we'll make sure you're a part of it. So what we'll do is I'll communicate this in the follow-up email, which will probably go out tomorrow or Saturday, and then we'll get whoever we get by early next week, and I'll send out a doodle, and we'll figure out a convenient day and time that works for the Business Journal as well, and we'll get this set up. It'll probably be, my sense is it'll probably be early March. I've got a bunch of travel pretty much from Tuesday through the end of the month, but we have till 2018, so we're on the right end of this to get this organized. So that's what we had for today, and we do right now we haven't yet set a date for our next meeting, but it'll probably be the third week of March. If there's a topic that would be helpful for you, and maybe just let me ask, this is the last question, is there a topic that would be helpful for you that we could target having a guest join us, or could be an internal discussion topic for all of us? Is there a topic that would be helpful for anyone? Well, feel free, please email me any topics that you're grappling with, and we can add them, whether it's to the March meeting or a future meeting. But please don't ever hesitate to send in things that would be helpful. You all know how to get a hold of me. For anyone that's not on the LinkedIn group, I'll again share this link on the next follow-up email. But there is a LinkedIn group for this group, so you can socialize anything with the group and very easily access everybody that's involved and get connected. So with that, I really appreciate everybody being a part of today. Good luck shoveling. I know I'm going to have a lot of shoveling later today, and we'll hope to see you all real soon.
Thanks, Bill.
Take care, Bill.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.